What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. It's Thursday, time to go game by game, talk about all the players I'd be starting and sitting this week. First up, tonight's game, Raiders at Broncos, 42.5 point total. Broncos, 9.5 point home favorites. For the Raiders, the loss of Myers, it's going to hurt them long-term to a degree and kind of help out everyone's target share, but realistically, it doesn't actually have a major impact from what we've been seeing recently. His last game where he had over 40 receiving yards was week 3. So for the most part, he gets like 20 or 30 receiving yards. You can pump those yards into like 7 different players, and basically no one's projection is going to change. It directly impacts Jack Besh. He gets onto the field more. His usage goes up. But I don't want to think this makes like, a ton of players amazing plays. If he was averaging 80, 90 receiving yards per game, sure. When you're averaging 30 and like 20 of them go to one player who we're still not starting, we're looking at 10 yards that we're pushing on to other players. Basically, you're starting Bowers, you're starting Genty. Obviously, don't expect 40 points from Bowers. It's not even that great of a spot for Genty, but I don't really see a scenario. Like, do you really have 3 running backs that are better than Genty right now? Probably not. Are you starting anyone ever over Brock Bowers when he's healthy? No, you are not. The only fringe player here is Trey Tucker. But even with Pat Surtain not playing this week, the Denver secondary, like even removing him, is still not one that I want to attack. So my lean would still be towards benching Tucker. But if you're super desperate, you'll really need someone. It can also be one of those situations where you're like, okay, play him at wide receiver, see what happens. If he does terrible, you're going to need some upside in other spots. If he goes off, maybe you can play it safer. But truly, I just really wouldn't want to be playing Trey Tucker. He will definitely not project as a top 30 wide receiver, even with the loss of Myers. And I would not feel good about streaming Geno Smith. There'll be other spots now that Bowers is back where maybe we can stream Geno, not this week. Then on the Denver side, this is, of course, a much better spot. They are 2-score home favorites against a Raiders defense that's not horrible, but is a plus matchup all around, besides tight ends. But it's mostly a positive spot for Denver. Problem with Denver is they do spread the ball around a lot, so you don't fully trust anyone. If you took all of their production and like focused it on one running back or one receiver, one tight end, sure, they don't do that, right? They spread it around to a lot of different players. They're splitting the production at running back. The tight ends don't necessarily see a ton of usage, and so I think Sutton should be started as a wide receiver 2. I think Dobbins should probably be played as a low-end running back 2. I think Bo Nix is in that general quarterback 11 to 14 range where if you've been streaming him, there's no reason to go away from him this week. Troy Franklin right now is my wide receiver 30. RJ Harvey is my running back 35. So it depends a lot on those two, what else you have. I don't think anyone on the Broncos is a clear must start, but I also kind of expect them to like at worst score 23, 24 points. They're probably expected to score 2, maybe 3 touchdowns tonight. So I would expect 1 to 2 good fantasy scores from this team. I don't feel overly confident in saying which 2 players are going to score that touchdown, but we should see like 1 or 2 of these guys have good enough scores where we're like, man, I really wish I put that into my starting lineup. So I wouldn't go as far as to say, like sometimes we say like as a tiebreaker, someone on this team. I wouldn't go that far and say as a tiebreaker, play a Denver player, but I don't hate the idea of playing any of these guys. And again, like with Tucker, I would say Tucker versus Troy Franklin, I would much rather play the game of Troy Franklin and be like, okay, put Franklin in there, see what happens to him, and then adjust the rest of your lineup accordingly. Again, only playing these players in the position that they play. So don't put Tucker, don't put Franklin into the flex spot. They're wide receivers. Put them into the wide receiver spot and give yourself more flexibility in the flex spot later on. I'd be more willing to do that with Troy Franklin than Tucker. But these fringe players really only come into play with Nix, Franklin, and Harvey. We're not expanding past that. I don't really want to play Evan Ingram. There's plenty of good tight ends at this point. If you're still playing Evan Ingram, you've missed out on like 10 options on free agency, and that's just your fault. Sunday games kick off 9:30 Eastern. We're back to the overseas games, 6:30 Pacific over in Berlin, Germany, or for us, it's Pacific time, 6:30. I don't even know what time it is for them. So please set your lineup Saturday night. set an alarm Sunday morning to make sure there's no surprise inactives. Sometimes we're like, oh, we're not expecting anything to be out. That's the point of surprises. They're unexpected. I will be running my first marathon on Sunday morning, so I'm not going to be able to change the projections if there's news. I would join the free Discord. There's a link to that in the description box down below. Ask away in there, ask other people, help each other out if there's anything weird that happens Sunday morning. But I'll also leave a note on the rankings page just going over all the injury situations and what I do, whatever happens. I'm not expecting to be able to make any sort of updates. Don't expect an update Sunday morning. This game, though, overseas game, will be Colts versus Falcons. Again, there's no at because they're both on the road here. 48.5 point total, Colts 6.5 point quote unquote home favorites. For the Falcons, easy. Start Bijan, start London. Their auto starts. Pitts, strong low-end tight end one. He's been very consistent this season. He's shown a ceiling at times. He hasn't shown the ceiling of like a top 3 or 4 tight end, but he's pretty consistently produced. Like, I would feel pretty good playing him as a mid to low-end tight end one. The Falcons will probably be playing from behind. You would expect virtually every touch goes to one of those 3 players, so I would just play all 3 and bench everyone else. And then for the Colts side, Daniel Jones, Jonathan Taylor, Pittman, Warren, all must starts in my eyes. And I would say Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, okay to put into the flex spot. Right now I have Pierce and Downs as the wide receivers, 32 and 40. So they certainly don't need to be in your starting lineup, but they can be. The Falcons defense isn't bad, and they're actually a very negative matchup for wide receivers, but the Colts are leaning pretty pass heavy. All 3 of their wide receivers are seeing decent volume. I would say it's of course, I said Pittman was must start. You're starting him. It is Pittman. Then it's been Pierce after that, then Downs. We kind of talked about that in the draft season, being like, well, Downs is a slot-only wide receiver, and so whenever they get into personnel packages that only have 2 wide receivers in the field, you're just not seeing Downs out there at as high of a rate. That can make him more game script dependent. In games where they don't pass as much, he's just not going to get the ball as much. Whereas you will have Alec Pierce on the field more, getting some of these downfield looks. And if you look over the last 4 weeks, Alec Pierce only has 1 fewer target than Michael Pittman Jr. He has at least 48 receiving yards in every single game since week 2. Alec Pierce is only not hit right now because he hasn't scored, but there's nothing that like screams, oh, he's never going to score touchdowns. He's a big play threat, so he's going to hit for a long touchdown at some point. So I really wouldn't feel that bad about using him in the flex. Again, not a good matchup, but you could play any of the Colts wide receivers this weekend. But then again, most of the players on this team are pretty good plays because the Colts offense is really good. Took a step back last week. I don't think the Falcons will look as good as the Steelers did in stopping them. 1 o'clock games. I'm going to kick off. Pretty good one. Ravens at Vikings, 49 point total. Ravens, 4.5 point road favorites. For the Ravens side, another pretty easy team. Start Lamar, start Henry, start Zay Flowers, bench the other wide receivers. And if you have to stream Andrews or Likely, you can. The tight ends won't project for that many yards, but either one of them could score. They're probably the more likely tight ends to score on the week. Tight ends actually do have the best matchup against the Vikings. Vikings really good at stopping opposing wide receivers. Teams realize this. They shift their focus to targeting the tight end position. So we could easily see, and I would say, probably better than a 50% chance that one of these 2 tight ends scores a touchdown. It is more likely that it is Mark Andrews. So neither going to project as a top 12 option, but they're going to project in that general range where all these guys are projected for like 25 to 37 receiving yards, and you're just praying one of them scores a touchdown. And Andrews and Likely are more likely than many of the tight ends in that range to score a touchdown, but again, still not a top 12 option for either of them. On the Vikings side, they're going to face off with a fairly weak Ravens defense. The issue is they're a much lower volume passing attack under McCarthy than like whoever else they bring in, whether it's Wentz, whether it's a different backup. Like, they just don't throw the ball as much with McCarthy at quarterback. That could change, right? We only have a couple starts with McCarthy, but it has been a trend that they are a lower volume team. To be fair, they won last week. We were expecting a more pass-heavy game script because they were playing at Detroit. I can't remember what the spread was, but they were pretty big-time underdogs. So we were expecting Detroit last week to get up, run the ball in the second half, and for the Vikings to have to throw it a lot. And that's not what happened because the Vikings end up winning the game. So Potentially, we see a different game script this weekend, and maybe the Vikings air the ball out more, but our expectation should still be low for this passing attack. Regardless, though, start Jefferson. Addison, I think, is more of a flex play than a wide receiver, too. Hawkinson in that same range as Mark Andrews. And then both the running backs are in that like running back, really 25 to 35 range, depending on the news that we get. We got to track the status of Aaron Jones. He seems pretty confident he's going to play, but track his practice reports later today for Thursday when this video is uploaded. Check it on Friday. That's really the one you're going to want to see. I do think Aaron Jones will play, but of course, if he doesn't practice Thursday or Friday, he's not going to play this weekend. If he plays, play him. If he does not play Mason. I feel like that's just the best way to play this one out. This projects more as an Aaron Jones game, plus the fact that like he's just looked better. He's used more in the receiving game. He's looked more explosive. So if both of them are playing, I don't really want to play Jordan Mason. I want to play Aaron Jones. But if Jones is out, Mason will have a strong enough volume expectation where you'll want him in the starting lineup. As of recording this, McCarthy projects pretty decently as a streaming option, not a top 12 quarterback, but he's going to probably be in that like 13, 14, 15 range when the week is said and done, which is a good streaming option, not a bad one. It helps him out that, he's willing to take off near the goal line. He can have these rushing touchdowns, and he's got such good playmakers that when they get close, they will throw the ball. And when you have Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, you've got a pass catching Aaron Jones, like there are great playmakers around him to where even if the passing yardage isn't that amazing, he could score 3 touchdowns on 15 total pass attempts. And so he'd have a really good day there. But yeah, less volume. So not expecting a huge day. I don't think you go out of your way to start him, but I'd be excited if I had him. I do have him in Dynasty, or if I, was in a deeper league, was stashing him. If he has a couple more of these pretty solid games and the volume starts to tick up, he's got a really good strength schedule to end the season. So I'd be excited, but I don't think right now we have to be going to him. Next up, we've got the Patriots at the Bucs, 48.5 point total, Bucs 2.5 point home favorites. For the Patriots side, we all know at this point, I say it every week for years now, Tampa Bay, they stuff the run. They force teams to lean pass heavy. With the current state of the Patriots running back room, combined with their just limited effectiveness on the ground in any game that they have not played the Tennessee Titans, we should expect a pass heavy game script from New England this week. Drake May, Stephon Diggs, must starts. Hunter Henry, really good option to stream at tight end. And we'll see with the running back room. If Stevenson's out, I think Henderson's fine as a low-end running back too, not someone you have to start. And then if Stevenson does play, I'm not really excited about any of them. I suppose you could play Stevenson as a low-end running back too. They'd probably go back to him, but I wouldn't be excited to play any Patriots running back. Again, this is not a spot where we expect them to lean run heavy. I don't expect a lot of rush attempts from New England. If Stevenson is out, Henderson will likely rack up a decent amount of receptions to kind of make his day in that area, but we should not expect heavy volume on the ground. We should not expect good efficiency on the ground. We should not really expect many rushing touchdowns or potentially any rushing touchdowns from New England, at least the running backs. Maybe Mac Jones runs back one win. So I just don't really want to play the running backs this week. And then Booty should miss this game, but I think that helps Douglas because it frees up some target share, but it helps more like Kyle Williams for the snaps. And Douglas, very weird. He was, he's historically been this slot wide receiver that has very low ADOT. He's been hitting on these like downfield plays, and they're designing some of these downfield looks to him, which is great to see. But he's been getting kind of lucky on some chunk plays. I don't necessarily think that like, oh, Booty's out, all of a sudden you're playing Douglas. Like, I just don't think you really have to be doing that. Booty doesn't really get that many targets every week. A couple will go to Kyle Williams. Matt Collins probably gets 1 or 2 more. Efton Chisholm might mix in and get a target or 2. So you're really not expecting. Like, I think sometimes people see someone's out and they're like, nice, this guy becomes a smash play. For the most part, guys' projections will increase by like 1 target. And so they might not even have any different of a day, but they'll project for like maybe half a point more. Like it's not going to impact that much when you remove the like 5 targets that Booty was going to get. It just goes to so many different players that no one really becomes that good of a play. So you're really only playing Drake May and Diggs. But if you had to play Douglas in a deep league, and Hunter Henry as well to hope for a tight end score there. But I don't want to play the running backs in this spot. On the Bucs side, it seems like Bucky and Godwin are both going to miss this week. Pretty annoying situations for both of them because there's just such a lack of clarity. Like, they're just not telling us anything. But the silver lining is at least that, like, it does seem like they're close. They're out there running. It does seem like we're closer than we were before. So maybe it is this week for one of them, but probably not. But maybe next week they can return. If they both miss, I think Egbuka is a clear must start. I think Cade Otton is totally fine to stream as like a low-end tight end 1, high-end tight end 2. Baker in that same general range, low-end quarterback 1, high-end quarterback 2. Tez Johnson, flex viable. I don't know how many of you have to go there, but if you were kind of looking at waiver wire, looking at your bench, and you're like, I don't know, I don't really like any of these plays, could I start Tez Johnson? I think absolutely. You're probably going to see probably Christian Gonzalez shadow or mostly shadow Egbuka. If the ground game can't get going because it's a really, really tough matchup for running backs, Tez Johnson's going to get some downfield looks. He's going to get probably an increased target share. He's honestly a pretty solid play this weekend. And then, yeah, I really don't like the running backs. So you can play Tucker or Rachaad White in like the flex spot because actually Tucker got a little bit more usage than we were expecting before the bye. So maybe that becomes closer than people are expecting. But as I've said every single week, New England just doesn't allow 50 yards. Like, they have not allowed a 50-yard rusher this season, and they've played some very, very good running backs so far. This has not been like a cupcake schedule for New England. They've played some of the best running backs in the NFL and have not allowed a 50-yard rusher. So I don't think Sean Tucker and Rachaad White are going to break that trend. So they're going to have to get all their volume through the air, and it's just not something I really want to do. So I really would not want to play either one of them. For both of these teams, and I think it's a benefit to both the teams as well, because if you have both sides not running the ball and throwing it a lot, pass attempts lead to more plays. Like, a rush doesn't stop the clock. Even if you run out of bounds, it stops like a second and then it keeps going. So it's like, you're going to get more plays when both sides are throwing it because you're going to get more incompletions. You can get higher efficiency. So maybe we can get more touchdowns, more back and forth affair. It just increases the chance we see a shootout. So if it's a tiebreaker, I do think you're probably leaning towards the Bucs, towards New England, because this passing attack for both sides could really get going. Next up, we've got Jaguars at Texans. Gross game low, 37.5 point total. The Jaguars are actually 1.5 point road favorites since CJ Stroud is going to miss this week with a concussion. On the Jaguars side, no one is that appealing. Texans have a top 3 defense. One of the defenses you just like truly fear this season when you have fantasy players going around them. They're a negative matchup to every single position, but especially a negative matchup to wide receivers and quarterbacks. Etienne is the closest thing to a good play, but he's only my running back 21 right now. I don't feel that great about him. I'm also projecting Brian Thomas Jr. out. I feel like he misses one game, but if he plays, gosh, it's just really not a good spot for him. He had the dud the last time these two teams played. So really, I think you can. I think you could probably play him in the flex spot, ideally like a wide receiver 3 spot. But even if he's out, I have that projected right now, and none of their wide receivers rank top 40. If you got like him out and maybe you got like Myers also being inactive because maybe it's like too soon for him to play or something like that, you could probably just play Parker Washington and hope he racks up like 12 targets and gets to 60 yards or something like that on that. But I just don't really want to be playing Jaguars players this weekend. And I also don't trust Myers. Shaheed we'll talk about in a little bit. I trust that a little bit more because he literally is going to a team who that was his offensive coordinator last season. So you have familiarity with the system. You don't have that with Myers going to Jacksonville. So for him to go out there and play like 80% of the snaps, because he'd need to play like 89% for me to actually want to play him against his defense, it feels unlikely. So I really just don't want to be playing Jaguars players if I can avoid it, but you probably have to play Etienne. I don't know that you can avoid it. Then on the Texans side, I'd really only want to start Nico as like a wide receiver 2, and I'd probably bench everyone else. Davis Mills isn't like exactly an amazing quarterback. He's fine. He's probably not one of the worst backups in the league, but he's not a good backup. And like this offense wasn't exactly amazing when CJ Stroud was there, and obviously Mills is worse than Stroud. Offensive line is a turnstile right now. I don't know that the Jaguars are going to be the team that really like fully takes advantage of that. But like, do you want to play Chubb? Do you want to play Woody Marks? No. Do you want to play these backup wide receivers? No. Do you trust Schultz? I know he's had a couple of good games. He's had duds mixed in there as well. So this game is largely one I want to avoid, but probably play Etienne and Nico. And then maybe Brian Thomas Jr. if he's healthy enough to play, but it's like he's probably still going to be banged up and it's a horrible matchup. So I honestly probably bench him too. Next up, if he plays. Next up, we've got Browns at Jets. Also a very low, 37.5 point total. Browns here are actually 2.5-point road favorites because the Jets traded away their whole defense. But know that, right? I think a lot of people are going to look at the spot and be like, the Jets defense is terrible now. And yes, we'll be attacking them. This is a 37.5-point total when you have also Dylan Gabriel at quarterback for the Browns. Like, don't think that the Browns are going to go in here, have like 500 yards of offense, score 34 points. We're looking at 37.5 total points from this game. So even as favorites, we're not expecting a lot of points from the Browns side. And honestly, even if the Browns get going, it might all be through Judkins. Like, this is an eruption spot for Quinshon Judkins. No way you can bench him if he's active. And again, we were never really concerned about the injury. So I think he's going to be totally fine. He should run all over this Jets defense, and the game script should be either neutral or positive. But like I was alluding to a second ago, it's like, that's probably going to happen. He's probably going to have a good game. He might score a touchdown or two. But do you trust this wide receiver room? Like, Tillman's probably getting back. So now you have Tillman and Judy. The tight ends are getting 1 million targets, but Njoku wasn't traded. So now you have Tillman, Judy, Njoku, and Fannin all catching passes from Dylan Gabriel, who's very much not a good quarterback. So all 4 of those skill players I just mentioned are viable. None of them stand out as great plays, even against the Jets. Fannin's probably the one I'm most interested in. Maybe he sees his role jump even higher post-bye, but I really don't love any of them. Fannin's the only one that I'd be like kind of excited to play, but like I have Fannin and Gadsden in a league, and I'm definitely playing Gadsden over Fannin. Then on the Jets side, I think Garrett Wilson's probably going to return this week. Obviously, track his status there. If he plays, play him. If he's out, you're probably not starting any of the Jets wide receivers. So start Garrett Wilson if he plays. Start Breece Hall, definitely. He's looked fantastic this season. I wish they had traded him. Latest report was that the Chiefs offered a 4th-round pick, but that the Jets were not going to accept anything lower than a 3rd-round pick, so they can't get anything done there. I still think that's a mistake on the Jets side, but you at least understand that, like, yes, they're tanking, but a 4th-round pick, you understand them probably wanting a 3rd-round pick and feeling like this is, one of our 2 good players, like for a 4th-round pick. Maybe it's just not worth it to them because they can also do the stupid franchise tag thing over and over again and get him for nothing. But I still think I would have figured something out. I think I would have gotten a deal done. If you want that 3rd-round pick, include another player or something like that, include another pick to move up. But yeah, they couldn't get it done. So start Garrett, start Breece Hall. Depends what you have when it comes down to Justin Fields and Mason Taylor. And it comes down to what you need when you have Fields, right? If you are a favorite by like a wide margin, do not play Justin Fields. I alluded to this in the free agent video. He could score between 2 and 40. Like, both of those outcomes are potentially equally possible as well. Like, he could do absolutely nothing and get benched by halftime. He could go out there, have 50 rushing yards and a touchdown, 250 passing and 3 touchdowns, and you're like, why don't we play him every week? It's, well, because the next week he has 30 net passing yards and 6 fumbles. Like, it's just, he's so variant in his production. But if you need that, if you're a big time underdog and you're like, how am I going to beat the number 1 team this week? Maybe through Justin Fields, because he has the upside to score 35, 37, 40 points at quarterback. Just remember, this is a game with a 37.5-point total, and the Jets are underdogs. So my lean is to not play Justin Fields unless you truly need that production. And Mason Taylor, fine, but he's in that tight end like 14 to 20 range where, the hope is you probably have something better, but he's not a bad option if you're kind of hoping that we see, the usage trend up in the rookie season, especially because they want to be featuring these young guys, and he's basically all they have at tight end. Next up, another sub 40-point total. This is the time of year where we're expecting more and more sub 40-point totals. We've got Saints at Panthers, 39.5-point total. Panthers, 5.5-point home favorites. That's how bad the Saints are. For the Saints, Shuck is a downgrade from Spencer Rattler, but Shaheed being gone also frees up some target share here. So I don't know, maybe a net neutral there. There is a massive drop-off in talent going down from Chris Olave to literally everyone else, but especially in the wide receiver room, Cooks and Vele, like, yikes. My worry rest of season for the Saints is that they are so easy to defend because sell out to stop Olave, let Cooks and Vele beat you, which they will not do. Let them do their gadget plays to Taysom Hill randomly. Let them lean on Devin Neal and the corpse of Alvin Kamara from time to time, they're not going to win. And so that's a worry. I still think you probably have to play Olave this week at wide receiver 2. I still think Juwan is probably like the tight end 12 to 15, that sort of range, and that you can probably still play Kamara as a low end too. I am just a little bit worried that we start to see the floor just completely evaporate with these players, and especially Alvin Kamara. They have no incentive to use him. He basically said, trade me and I will retire. They wanted to trade him, but they're basically like, okay, if we don't do that, you understand that as the season goes on, we're going to slowly use you less and less and less. And basically he's okay with that happening. So we'll see when that downtrend kind of starts, but it could happen at any time. At any time you could go out there, look at the box score and be like, why does Devin Neal have 12 carries to Alvin Kamara's 4? It's like, well, because it's happening, right? The tank is happening. The youth movement is happening. I don't think it happens this week, but understand it can happen at any time. On the Panthers side, they are finally featuring Rico Dowdle, which finally, right? Like it's been pretty obvious for a little bit here that he's been the best running back in the room, but they had those 2 weird games where they're like, no, let's go back to Chuba, who's been bad for like 2 years. Like I understand in fantasy, he was good last season, but as we said so many times over the summer, fantasy is different from reality. In reality, he was not a good running back. He was inefficient, horrible in the receiving game. And historically, when you have really, really, really bad yards per route run numbers for a running back, they get replaced. They just don't do good the next season because teams look at these things and they're like, why is he out there, right? Like he's not ripping off explosives. He's not making people's miss. He can't catch in the receiving game. Why are we playing him? It was a little bit slower, the transition to Rico, than we expected, but it finally did occur. So Rico is a clear low-end running back 1. You have to play him this week. Tet is a solid low-end wide receiver 2. I know people are frustrated with the production. And hey, if the Panthers get up by 10, 14 points, which is actually possible, I don't think the expectation is that, but it's possible, they're not going to throw the ball that much. So maybe we see another down game for Tet McMillan. He is too talented. He has too large of a share of this passing offense to where I think you play him every week. But I get it. If you have like 3 wide receivers that are better, he's still only like a low-end wide receiver too. So if you have 3 top 20 wide receivers, you can definitely bench Tet McMillan. Yeah, those are the only 2 you feel good about this week. And really any week moving forward. Next up, we've got the Giants at the Bears, 46.5 point total. The Bears are 5.5 point home favorites in this one. For the Giants, it's an okay spot. The total is decently high. The Bears defense isn't one that you're like scared of, really. I mean, they have their spots where they're decent, but they're not that good of a defense. The problem is, who do you trust? Like the running back's going to split touches. You've got Wandale having the best target share, but he doesn't get looks downfield. He's a 0 in the red zone. You've got Slayton with that downfield usage, with maybe some red zone usage. Theoretically, we haven't really seen it played out, but theoretically he has more than Wandale, but he hasn't been able to connect on those deep balls. He has drops. That's just the thing that he does. Theo Johnson has a great red zone role, but you're expecting like 30 to 35 receiving yards if he doesn't score. So that's not great. Like the only person you actually trust here is Jackson Dart, but you're also waiting for the floor to fall off from Jackson Dart. Like he's been playing out of his mind. At what point does throwing to Theo Johnson, Wandale Robinson, Darius Slayton, Singletary, and Tyron Tracy, at what point does throwing to those guys start to, cause him to have a 10 or a 12 point fantasy day? I think, honestly, you're still streaming Jackson Dart if you have been, because the mobility is there and he's a cheat code and he's clearly a good quarterback. But the reality is I don't like any player on the Giants right now. If you had to use one of Singletary or Tracy Jr. in the flex spot, you can. If you had to use one of these wide receivers, you can. None of them are must starts. And track the weather, because that's part of the projection right now, is that we've got potential rain, snow, wind in this spot. That's kind of bringing things down a little bit. If that becomes not an issue, maybe we see the projections rise a little bit, but we'll see, right? We can't possibly know on Thursday what the weather's going to be. That's something you check on Saturday and Sunday morning. On the Bears side, and also, if you were to look at the projections right now, it is barely factoring that in. So if you wake up Sunday morning and it looks bad, understand that it's even worse than I'm saying right now. Right now, I'm barely projecting for it to happen because it's too far away to really know. And this is for both sides, obviously. Then on the Bears side, Giants, positive matchup for all positions, but no one really stands out, especially if you see Swift back, which it seems like it's going to happen, right? If Swift didn't play, you start Monunga again, obviously. If Swift does play, you're not super excited about these two splitting. Adunze is also seeing his usage drop off a cliff post-bye. Like, he's not getting looked at as much. Like, literally, he was the first read on so many plays. He was being utilized in the red zone heavily. Post-bye, they're not looking his way as much. Like, he is not the first read at as high of a rate. He's not being used in the red zone as much, or really anywhere as much. So it's a concern. It's something to where, like, could it just be low sample size? And this week he goes out there, has 8 for 100 in a score, and you're like, okay, maybe I overreacted a little bit. Maybe. But it's concerning nonetheless that they've gone super run heavy post bye and have not looked his way as much. If we get the poor weather conditions, we could see this total drop into the low 40s. That would really hurt everyone's projection. So I'm kind of in wait and see mode, honestly, with the Bears. I am totally fine starting Dunze if you have to. I am totally fine starting Swift if you have to. I would love an update, and I think we'll get one later in the week as terms of like, or as far as like what the split is expected to be. But I don't love anyone on the Bears this weekend. Final 1 o'clock game is going to be Bills at Dolphins, a very high 50-point total. Bills 9.5-point road favorites, giving them a 30-point implied team total. For the Bills, I am currently projecting 3.5 touchdowns on average this week, which is an absolutely wild number, and it opens the door to a 5-touchdown game and an okay shot at a 4-touchdown game as well. So fringe options are much more viable when you're projecting 3.5 touchdowns on average. Allen, Cook, Kincaid, all must starts. Shakir right now is my wide receiver 22, so you could play him at wide receiver 2 as a low end 2, more likely wide receiver 3 or flex play. And then Keon, wide receiver 38, but I get it if you wanted to go there because the total is so high, because you can really do whatever you want against the Dolphins, because the Dolphins can fall apart on offense and you can get short fields, elevated red zone plays, which is what we want from Keon Coleman. I will say Shakir has really separated from Keon Coleman this last month. Keon has exactly one game over 30 receiving yards since week 1. It's maybe a nice get right spot for Keon Coleman, but that's got to be in the back of your mind, right? That like he's not being used. It's not like the Bills haven't been good on offense. One game over 30 receiving yards since week 1. Maybe we're holding on to Keon a little bit more than we should here. So mostly start everyone on this offense, but Keon is, of course, the one that you don't really have to play. Then on the Dolphins side, it's straightforward. You start Etienne, you start Waddle, you bench everyone else. I don't mind if in like a 14 or 16 team league, you want to take a shot on Malik Washington, especially in full PPR, but the odds are he's going to have like 3 or 4 receptions for 30 or 40 receiving yards and probably not score a touchdown. So 8, 10, 12 team leagues, you don't really need to go there. 4 o'clock games kick off with Cardinals at Seahawks. 45.5-point total. Seahawks 6.5-point home favorites. For the Cardinals, Kyler's on IR with a foot injury, and so Jacoby Brissett going to be the starter moving forward. This is good news for the entire offense, but exceptional news for Marv and Trey McBride. This is unfortunately a pretty brutal spot on the road in Seattle against a great Seattle defense. Even years where Seattle didn't have an elite defense, you don't like playing in Seattle, but now that they have one of the better defenses in the league, you really don't like playing in Seattle. McBride should never leave your starting lineup. And I think you're locking Marv into that wide receiver 2 spot with Brissett at quarterback. Of course, last week they played the Cowboys in Dallas. That's, of course, a nuke spot for wide receivers. But Marv probably should have had 100 in a score on that last play. He's looked much, much better with Brissett at quarterback. Funny how that kind of occurs. It's almost like Marv is a very good wide receiver. You just need someone capable of throwing him the football. And Brissett, who is still not one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, is just a better passer than Kyler is. He should be the starter long-term. Not long-term, right? He's not the starter of the future for the Cardinals, but he should start every single game rest of season for this team. But again, just temper expectations against Seattle. I'm very excited about Marv and McBride rest of season. There'll be weeks where we're streaming Jacoby Brissett. Hopefully, Trey Benson comes back. He looks good, and we really like this offense rest of season. But in Seattle, please temper expectations and please don't overreact. If Marv goes out there and has 4 for 50 and no score, it's like, yeah, in Seattle is not a good spot. But I still think, and I, of course, have it factored in, I have the matchups factored in, he still projects as a low-end wide receiver 2, so you can play. As for the running backs, I'll be honest, DeMercado clearly looks like their best running back on the roster right now. Again, we'll see if it continues to look that way once Trey Benson is back. But for right now, I think, if you were trying to stream a running back too, you were looking at DeMercado, you're looking at Knight. It was nice seeing Knight get the goal line opportunities, didn't convert the goal line opportunities last week, but it's undeniable that you watch that game and you just see DeMercado look better. And you know what? It's kind of, I don't want to say funny, I don't know what the right word is for it, but you look back, right? And it's like, DeMercado was the one that broke off that super long play. And if he doesn't drop the ball at the 1 yard line, you probably don't see him benched the following week. Maybe he doesn't suffer the ankle injury, and maybe we just see him start to rip off a bunch of really good games in a row, because at this point, Michael Carter's terrible, and Bam Knight is Bam Knight. We know who Bam Knight is. And so maybe DeMercado would have actually had some really good games. He just pulled an idiotic move and dropped the ball at the 1 yard line. So, I mean, let's be honest, I'm not expecting amazing production here, and I'm still not even projecting DeMercado as a top 30 option. So I'm not saying go out, sell your team for Marty DeMercado. He could go out there and have 5 fantasy points, but if I was looking for a running back to start in this team, it would be him. It's just unfortunate that, again, they play Seattle is probably a top 5. Yeah, I would say a top 5 defense overall, maybe top 7 if you want to be liberal about it, but one of the best, probably a top 3 run defense in the NFL. On the Seattle side, I'm not sure how many snaps Shaheed is going to play. Like I said this before, when wide receivers change teams, it takes a bit for them to ramp up, but he's familiar with the system, right? The Seahawks offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak, was the Saints offensive coordinator last season. And you're going to have similar concepts, and they know each other, and they know what each other knows as well, right? Clint Kubiak knows what Shaheed can do. He knows how to utilize him, and he knows what plays to call for him. So even if we saw a limited snap share for Shaheed, it is likely that on those snaps, it is plays Shaheed knows how to run, has run before, and plays that Clint Kubiak knows he can get the ball to Shaheed. So I'll be honest, you can stream him this week. You can play him as a wide receiver 3 in the flex spot. Right now, he's my wide receiver 41. I do think I want to bump that up because of the things I've just said. And if we get a report that like he'll be a full go in snaps, he might become a top 30 wide receiver. And I am excited about him long term. This is a fantastic offense, a highly efficient passing attack, and teams still have to sell out to stop JSN. And this deep ball has been hitting for this team. And so when you add in Shaheed to a deep ball team, sure, the target share is obviously going to be lower than he had in New Orleans, but these targets were so close to the line of scrimmage in New Orleans, there was no upside. Oh, he's got some upside now, and especially weekly upside in Seattle. So I'm very excited to have him as, I think, my second or third most roster wide receiver this season. I'm very excited about him long-term in the system, but also rest of season. Right now, it is a win rest of season if you have Shaheed. Aside from him, JSN, obviously start him. Right now, Ken Walker is my running back 20, Charbonnet, running back 29, Sam Darnold, quarterback 15. Ken Walker actually had 4 snaps inside the 5-yard line last week compared to only 1 for Charbonnet. They threw for 4 touchdowns though, and they also had AJ Barner in the quarterback sneak position. So they scored 5 touchdowns, but none of them went to the running backs. That creates some hope though. Like if you have Ken Walker, you've seen up to that point in games that they both played together, 14 plays, 14 snaps inside the 5-yard line for Charbonnet, 1 for Ken Walker. But last week, it was 4 for Ken Walker, 1 for Charbonnet. Could it be randomness? Maybe, but when you see these sort of differences coming out of the bye, it gives you some level of hope. So I think both can be played as a running back too. And then for the tight ends, I don't trust them. Like the usage combined isn't bad, but they're kind of splitting the usage, so you can't really play a Seattle tight end. Next up, we've got Rams at 49ers, 49.5 point total. Rams 4.5 point, road favorites. For the Rams side, same as always. I mean, start Puka, start Adams, start Kyron, bench everyone else, or bench all the other skill players. Stafford is kind of a streaming option most weeks, but this week he grades out really well. Quarterback 7 on the week for me right now. If you've been using him, keep using him. If he's on free agency, add him and play him. 4 and 5 touchdown passes over the last 2 weeks, including 2 touchdown passes or more in 6 of 8 games this season. He's got a completely non-existent rushing floor. That obviously is not ideal, but he's still a very strong play at quarterback this week. And honestly, moving forward, if him and Adams are going to score a touchdown every single week, that is going to help the floor and ceiling for Matthew Stafford. On the 49ers side, we have another week of unknowns for Purdy and Pearsall. My guess is that both are not going to play again, but Purdy has a better chance of playing than Ricky Pearsall. Assuming both are out, you've got Kittle as a mid-range tight end 1. You've got McCaffrey, obviously, as the number 1 overall running back. And then you've got Jawan as a low-end flex play. The Rams do have a very strong defense overall. They are not a matchup I ever want to look to secondary players against. I would ideally only play McCaffrey and Kittle. I would probably stay away from the San Fran wide receivers this week, and I would not stream Mac Jones. It really would just be McCaffrey and Kittle and no one else. Final 4 o'clock game is going to be Lions at Commanders, 49.5 point total. Lions 8-point road favorites. For the Lions, awesome spot. They have the second highest implied team total of the week at nearly 29 points, and the Commanders are a plus matchup to every position, especially tight ends. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Gibbs, Laporta, and Goff, all must starts this week. Monty, strong play at running back too. J-Mo is a low floor, high ceiling flex play. Detroit should score at least 3 touchdowns this weekend, likely going to score 4 touchdowns. And so everyone is set up well here. I would be comfortable starting all of them. Of course, even if they score 4 touchdowns, everyone might not score, especially if someone scores twice, but it's a good spot for everyone. On the Commanders side, the Lions are a negative matchup all around, and their efficiency probably going to drop going down to Mariota from Jane Daniels at quarterback. Mariota is one of the better quarterbacks or backup quarterbacks in the league. He does run the same system. You can use the exact same plays as Jane Daniels, but you still don't feel that great about Commanders players this weekend. Assuming Terry McLaurin is going to miss another week, Debo is a strong start at wide receiver too. The volume expectation is solid there. And then Ertz is viable to stream in that general tight end 12 to 15 range. Aside from those two, though, no one's really that appealing. It doesn't set up like a JCM game. Chris Rodriguez also looked pretty good last week. He looked good in the preseason. I don't know. I have some concerns that he's going to start to mix in more and more if JCM can't really get going. You can't really trust, you can't trust the combined usage of Chris Rodriguez and JCM in this spot, because you could also have McNichols mix in a little bit if they're trailing. So I'll be honest, I probably wouldn't play any of the running backs this weekend. Even Mariota doesn't project that well. I'm trying to boost his projection because I understand that the rushing production is probably going to be there, but it's tough to get him any higher than the quarterback, like 14 or 16. It's just not a good spot for the Commanders this weekend, even playing at home. There's a risk that Detroit gets up. They run the ball enough in the second half to limit plays for the Commanders pieces, and the Commanders pieces just don't have enough efficiency to really sustain a lot of drives, and that could just really hurt. I would probably rather stream Caleb, depending on the weather in that spot. I'd rather stream Matthew Stafford. I would rather stream Jackson Dart all instead of Mariota, even if I had Jane Daniels. But I understand if you have Daniels, you just wanted to add Mariota and then just cross your fingers that Daniels returns. Some people have asked if they can drop Daniels. I feel like we're going to learn soon. I don't know. I think they're going to give us a timeline at some point relatively soon to where I don't love the idea of dropping him until we know. If it does come out that he's only going to miss a month and that maybe you get him back for the fantasy playoffs, it's like, okay, that hurts, right? You just dropped him and now someone else can get them and crush you with them in the fantasy playoffs. So unless you really, really, really need that spot, throw him on IR, keep him in the last bench spot, and then just see. And if they tell us he's done for the season, okay, now you can drop him. I would hold on to him for a week and hope we get some sort of news. Sunday night game is going to be Steelers at Chargers, 45-point total. Chargers, 2.5-point home favorites. For the Steelers, they're kind of an annoying offense. You would think they'd consolidate a little more around their good players, but they spread the ball around so much that no one really ever stands out that much. Jaylen Warren's a clear must start. He's taken over the lead in this backfield. He looks good. He has a role in the receiving game in the red zone. You got to play him. And then Metcalf is a solid flex play. He's got big play upside. They'll use him in the red zone. But weeks like last week are also possible for Metcalf. That's why he's more of a flex play than a wide receiver too. I just don't trust most of this team. I don't trust Rodgers. The tight ends see great usage overall, but 4 of them split the touches, so you can't trust them. I don't trust the backup running backs. I don't trust secondary wide receivers. And I kind of don't even trust DK Metcalf. So start Warren, probably start Metcalf in the flex. don't love everyone else. Then for the Chargers side, they're back to having a decimated offensive line. I'm projecting them to take the most sacks on the weekend. It's also concerning that like Vidal looked so good 2 weeks ago and then looked so bad against the Titans of all teams last week, and that Patterson mixed in for 9 carries. The game last week also was never a blowout, so it wasn't like, oh, Chargers must have steamrolled the Titans. They won by a touchdown, but it was never a blowout, and so it wasn't Patterson mixing in for blowout run. It was like a mixture throughout the game. The Chargers also just like continue not to target their running back, so that adds to the risk there as well. I truly would not want to start either Vidal or Patterson, which again is wild given how good Vidal looked 2 weeks ago and how perfect the spot was last weekend. You'd be imagining I'd walk in here being like, clear must start, but the drop-off was so huge last week, and the drop-off for this team is so big when they just can't get their offensive line healthy. Like, they're healthy for a very small amount of time, and not even fully healthy, but just a little bit healthy for a small amount of time. And then they suffer another injury, and it's like they're just back to being a team that can't block anyone, gets absolutely bulldozed in the passing attack, and you know that the Steelers are going to do that. So the Steelers are going to rack up plenty of sacks. They're going to make life miserable for Herbert. Good news is that they have enough skill in the passing attack, and Herbert's good enough, especially with scrambling and everything, that like you can play Herbert. You can play Ladd McConkey. You can start Gadsden. I think you are starting all three of them, but it limits my my interest in Keenan and Quentin, because Quentin needs the ball downfield. He needs touchdowns. And if this offensive line is just getting steamrolled every single play, there's no time to get the ball downfield to Quentin. And Keenan needs all this volume. Well, you've got to drive down the field for that volume to happen. And I don't know. I don't have a lot of faith right now in this Chargers offensive line and thus the Chargers offense. So I think start Herbert, start Ladd, and start Gadsden. Probably don't play anyone else, but if you had to play Keenan or Quentin in the flex spot, you can do it. I really just do not like the running backs, especially. Final game of the week, Monday Night Football. Should have a great game between the Eagles and the Packers. 44.5 point total. Packers 2.5 point home favorites. For the Eagles, I'm assuming A.J. Brown is going to play this week, but the analysis is the same either way. Just don't play him if he's not starting. Start Hurts, Saquon, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, bench everyone else. None of them are smash plays, and the Eagles' team total is a lot lower than you would expect for them, especially coming off bye, but everything flows through those players. I think you have to just play them. If it becomes a situation where we kind of don't know with A.J. Brown before the Sunday games, you can play someone else instead of him to de-risk the situation, but I'm pretty sure he's going to play this week, and I think we'll know by that point. And then for the Packers, Jacobs is a clear must start. I think Dobbs is a really good play as a wide receiver too. Jordan Love, like a high-end quarterback too, in that same general range as Jackson Dart. The loss of Tucker Kraft does free up some targets, but again, like I said before, don't overreact. Even when you have one of the better players on an offense done for the season, it's not like Tucker Kraft racked up 15 targets every game. There were plenty of weeks where he had like 5 total targets. If you take those 5 targets and you give it to like 8 players, no one becomes that much better of a play. And I especially think people are going to flock to Luke Musgrave, but they're not designing plays to Luke Musgrave in the way they were for Tucker Kraft. So I would not play Musgrave in an 8, a 10, or a 12 team league. He's only reserved for deeper formats for me, or maybe tight end premium as well. Christian Watson is potentially appealing in this spot, especially if Matthew Golden is out. If you remove Kraft and Golden and you give another week of ramp up for Christian Watson, I can see how that would be appealing. Maybe he can rack up 4 or 5 receptions, get into like 70, 80 receiving yards, maybe convert a touchdown. Like, he'd be a pretty good flex play if Golden were out. And even projecting Golden in, he's my wide receiver 36 right now. He'd probably end up as a top 30 wide receiver if Golden were out though. So I'd be totally fine if you wanted to like reserve your flex spot for him. He's got ceiling as well, right? He could hit for a 60 or 70 yard touchdown in any matchup. So I like him a decent amount this week, but of course you'd prefer Golden to be missing. So that's how I'm seeing every game this weekend. Please check the rankings on Saturday to get my final update, because I will be making changes later today, on Friday, on Saturday. So check back in the app or on the website, thefantasyfootballvice.com. That'll do it for this one, though. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you all on Monday to go over my favorite waiver ads for week 11.